Hi everyone, this is Black Bolt. My name is Alan. Hope you all had a wonderful Christmas. Today is Friday, December 31st, and I want to wish all of you a Happy New Year. And I want to start by thanking the 960 people who have subscribed to the channel. I started this channel in October of 2020, and I was not expecting to get more than 100 subscribers, to be honest with you, so I am definitely grateful for all of you. Today I want to do my 10,000 mile review on the car. I actually missed it by a little bit. As you can see, I have owned this car for 10,978 miles, and the car now has 20,326 miles. So my impressions on the car are really good. I'm actually liking it more and more as I become accustomed to it. I'll start off with some things that could be better. I've mentioned the radio before. This radio is it's a low quality radio. I've thought about replacing the head unit, which I might do if I decide to keep this car for a really long time. This one is adequate. I mostly listen to motivational talks and that kind of thing when I'm driving, so I'm not necessarily listening to high quality music, but I also do like listening to, like right now I'm listening to KTIS 98.5, so it would be nice to have a decent speaker system. That's something that I had in the Chevy Bolt EV that I miss. The other thing that I miss a little bit is the added range that I had in the Bolt. This car with a 40 kilowatt hour battery, as you can see, I've started the day with just about 120 miles of range. The current temperature in the Twin Cities is 14 degrees, and in most places it gets warmer as the day goes on. Here in Minneapolis, the temperature is going to drop another 25 degrees, and this time tomorrow it's going to be around negative 14 degrees, and then our high for the day will be -2, which will happen sometime around midnight tonight, which is crazy and one of the reasons that I wanted to leave Minnesota, but we are staying here. Then let's jump to the positives that I like about the car. So in one of my early videos I complained about creaks and noises and just that kind of thing. I have mostly resolved that. One of them was the way that I keep my portable air pump that plugs into the cigarette lighter thing. I previously had it in a little hidden cubby, and I just put it in the bag with the portable charging cable, so now I don't get that sound. The other major noisemaker was the license plate holder, and that seems to have kind of taken care of itself, and if that sound does come back, then I will just add little rubber pellets to the back of the license plate, and that'll help it stop making those noises. And then as to having shorter range, since I changed the rate plan in my house to allow me to be able to charge all day, having less range isn't really an issue. I typically drive 75 miles at a time, so usually right now it's 10:15. I'm not working today because it's a holiday, but usually if I go out in the morning, I would drive from say 6 to 7:45, get home, plug the car in. By 4 o'clock, when my work day is over, I work on the East Coast, the car is back at 90 to 100% charge, and then I drive another maybe 75 to 100 miles. So in a day when I'm doing the most driving possible, which would be around 150 miles, this car works just fine. And as you guys saw in summer, this car will get 170 miles. But in winter, and especially on days like today when the temperature is going to persistently drop, the range is only around 100 miles. And when I bought this car, I thought it had the heat pump with the cold weather package, but some of you guys let me know that the S trim does not have the heat pump, and I did some digging in Nissan's documents. They're hard to find, but it's in there. Heat pump only comes with SV and SL trims. If you guys are a Nissan owner and you have the SV or SL trim, let me know how much range you get in winter relative to the EPA rating, so not relative to whatever you normally get. Like this car has a 150 mile EPA rating, but I get around 170 miles per charge. But when I look at the 100 miles, I compare it to the 140 miles or 150 miles that it's rated to get by the EPA. So let me know how much range you get if you live in the upper Midwest, it's cold, and you're driving with your heater 100% of the time. Other things that I've just like about the car, I still find it really easy to drive. The other feature that I've really been impressed with in this car, or not impressed, but I really enjoy the seats. They're comfortable. They don't leave me with any kind of backaches. They are semi-snug. They are not snug like the Bolt EV seats, but I don't move around a lot in them, and I'm a relatively skinny guy. The Bolt seats I liked because for someone my size, they fit right around my body, but if you were any bigger than a super skinny East African soccer player, then those seats were probably going to be slightly uncomfortable for you. And as I have gone up in age, I've gotten slightly bigger, especially over the last year and a half, 2 years. I've gained a decent amount of weight, and I wouldn't complain about the Bolt seats and say they were uncomfortable, but these are definitely more comfortable. Ownership experience with this car, there have been some ups and downs. I do still get occasional charging issues. The car is charging overnight fine every night, but sometimes when I plug it in, I'll get there are 3 lights up front here. They're blue lights. Let's see if I can turn one on right now. Nope, can't turn it on or off when the car is driving. There are charge indicator lights up there. All 3 of them will beep 3 times to let you know that the charging wasn't initiated. And I've had that happen to me a couple of times. And the way that I've been solving that is the way that you would solve your old Nintendo cartridge problem, is by blowing on the EVSE cable and by blowing on the charge port in the car. And after doing that a few times, then the car starts charging. If you're a Nissan LEAF owner and you've encountered that, let me know if there's a permanent solution or if you think there's potentially an issue with my car. A little while I was getting paranoid and thinking that maybe the car was sold because of that little challenge and the person who sold it just didn't know how to resolve it. But other than that, the ownership experience has been relatively good. My wife really likes driving this car. It has a smaller battery than the Bolt, so it's lighter on its feet and it feels like a regular car. My wife does get a little bit concerned when it snows that this car is lighter than the Bolt, but that doesn't bother me. I've been driving in eco mode with the e-pedal, as you can see, and in a typical day I usually gain about 6 miles of range due to the e-pedal. I actually just got on the brake there. I use the brake about once every 3 or 4 days. As you can see, I reset this trip meter not too long ago, but I've driven over 1,000 miles since I reset it. As you can see, I'm currently getting 2.9 miles per kilowatt hour. That's been over the past week or so, and we've had unusually cold temperatures in Minnesota, with temps staying around 0, some days dropping below 0, some days above 0. But we are getting colder temperatures in Minnesota than even we're accustomed to for this time of year. Right now we're getting our February style temperatures, so if it gets any colder than this, it's going to be really unbearable. But somebody thought it was a good idea to build this far north on the Mississippi, so we just deal with it. Another thing that I really enjoy with this car, like this morning while I'm out recording this video, I'm doing some Uber Eats and DoorDash. It is a really good car for rideshare. If you are going to be doing rideshare full-time, I would definitely recommend, if you wanted to get a Nissan LEAF, to get the longer range model. I work during the day, so I have 8 hours to charge the car if I use it in the morning. My experience with the CHAdeMO hasn't been an issue whatsoever. In the Twin Cities, all but one charger that I'm aware of that has CCS also has a CHAdeMO plug. This car has a decent charging curve, so in half an hour I can usually go from less than 10% to around 70 or 80%, so that's fine. Again, in spring that's going to get you more range. In winter that's going to top you up from say 15 or 20 miles to around 100 miles. And it tapers off pretty seriously once the battery reaches 50% charged. So generally speaking, if I need to do a fast charge, I'm not going to be charging it for longer than half an hour, because that becomes a waste of time. And also, if you don't fast charge very frequently, then you don't know this, but fast charging basically makes the cost of electricity approximately the same as the cost of gas, at least here in the Twin Cities. So it's a very inefficient way of doing things. So it's best to charge at home, but if you're going to be driving this car all day long doing rideshare and you need 200 miles, then get the longer range car. Another thing that I like about this car is its value, and I'm probably going to make a whole separate video on the value of these cars, but you can currently buy SL Plus or SV Plus trim of this vehicle for $30,000 to $32,000 with maybe 1,000 miles on it. And the reason I'm using that price instead of saying go buy a new one and get the $7,500 tax credit is because the majority of normal people, if you make less than $150,000, you just aren't going to have $7,500 in tax liability unless you're not doing your taxes very well. If you make $150,000 and you have at least one kid and you pay that much in taxes, then you need to be going to a professional tax person to lower your taxes. And I am not against paying taxes. I am grateful to live in the United States and have all of the amenities that we have here that we get because of taxes, but you should not pay a dime more in taxes than you need to. The only other similarly priced vehicle that's currently available in the market that's around the same size is the VW ID4. The reason that I include the ID4 in the budget category is because if you buy it as a lease and immediately pay off the lease, VW's leasing company is going to add that $7,500 tax credit to your lease. So you're going to be able to buy an ID4 for $34,000, which is a really good price for the quality of that car. The Chevy Bolt EUV, which unfortunately is part of the recall, and because it's part of the recall, Chevy actually can't sell those cars right now. If the Chevy Bolt EUV does become available on the market again, it's definitely a car that I'm going to drive because I was very impressed with it the first time that I drove it. It has a really good price. It has a really good feature set. The premier version of that car, I was tooling around on their website recently, still comes in at around $38,000, I believe. For an EV with that range and the quality of build that it is, that's a really good price. For comparison, the Tesla Model 3 is now up to $45,000, which brings us up to our next point. If you want a road trip, this is probably not the car for you. I am sure that there are people out there who have road tripped the 150-mile Nissan LEAF. Back before I got the Bolt EV, when I was doing my research, there's a channel, I believe, Lemon Tea Leaf, based out of Scotland, that I watched a lot, and he would drive his Leaf from Scotland down into the southern tips of England. It worked out for him. That's just not something I would do with this car. I don't think it's a very good use of time to do that. I would still buy this as my only car if I'm able to charge it at home and I don't road trip frequently, because it's still going to be a better use of your time and money to buy this car, use it as your daily driver, and on the occasions when you're going to be going on a road trip, rent a Suburban or a Yukon or whatever you want. That is still more eco-friendly, it's more budget-friendly, it's relatively convenient. So there really isn't a compelling reason to not get one of these based on the idea that you might road trip once or twice a year. Now, if you're someone like RMT Mike and you go on road trips constantly, he actually does take his Bolt out for road trips. Go check out his channel if you haven't. He does take his Bolt on road trips, but he also has a Tesla Model 3, which is a really cool car that he also uses for road trips, or at least he did in the past. So that lady had a small dog with small dog syndrome, very aggressive, but not very dangerous. This car is a very good car to own. To the current Bolt owners out there, at this stage of the game, if I still had my Bolt, would I trade in my Bolt for this car if I didn't drive a lot? if you don't drive a lot and you're comfortable with your Bolt situation and you are in line to get a battery, I would say no, sit tight and wait. Of course, do that at your own risk because you know what's going on with the cars. But I don't think there have been any fires recently, so maybe the software is behaving the way it's supposed to and preventing those fires from happening, and hopefully users are just being wise about how you use the cars to minimize risk. But I didn't think the Bolt ever had as much risk as GM made it out to, and I still think they blew it out of proportion and handled the entire situation the wrong way with recalling every single car that was made, including the 2022s. Yeah, so those are my impressions on this car. So this car is a really good value. I don't regret getting it. I enjoy it very much. I would do it again. The only thing I would change, because of how our buyback came into place, my wife and I hadn't had enough time to save up the extra reserves. If we had had an extra $10,000, then we would have gotten an S Plus or an SV Plus, something on the used market, potentially with more range. If we had had an extra $5,000, then we would have gotten either the SV or the SL trim of the 40 kWh battery, because they have extra features like adaptive cruise control, the heat pump, and things like that, which are necessary in Minnesota. If I had known very clearly up front that this S trim did not come with the heat pump, I probably would have held off on replacing the Chevy Bolt EV. I would have still taken the buyback. I would have waited a little bit longer and saved up a few extra dollars and bought an SV or an SL trim. But that's really the only thing that I would change with this car. It's done really well for me. As you can see, I've already driven 12.3 miles today and I still have 109 miles of range left. It's a comfortable car to drive. It's a fun car to drive. Something that I learned that I didn't know before, currently I have the e-pedal and eco mode on. So if I turn off the heat, it goes up to 134 miles. If I turn on eco, it goes down to 126. Heat on with no eco is 103. Heat on with eco is 108. I don't know how accurate that is, because all the non-eco mode does is it gives you access to the entire power all the time, but you could probably modulate eco mode with your foot and have full power at all times, whereas eco mode kind of reduces power unless you step on it. And that's one more thing with this car. This car's regular mode is equivalent to the Bolt's regular mode, so the eco mode makes it extra not punchy, whereas with the Bolt, sport mode takes it from this car's regular mode to extra juice, which makes it even more fun to drive. So those are just some of the things to consider. Chevy Bolt EV is a really great car. I would definitely buy the 2022 or the EUV in the future if we decide to exchange this car. There are a lot of good EVs coming on the market, so I don't know what we will end up buying. I like the Tesla Model 3, obviously. I think it's a really good car, but I'm not sure that I'm a luxury car kind of guy. Otherwise, Audi EQ4, which is equivalent to the VW ID4, is actually the same price as the Tesla Model S, and I went and did a build of that, and that's a really cool car. The Polestar 2 is also a car that I want to drive and see that if I was going to go for a luxury car. But you guys know me, I'm more about the value. I use my car as a workhorse for the moment. I don't want to get a car that's going to depreciate a lot or that's just weirdly out of place. But at this stage of the game, I like this car. It's comfortable. It does everything that I need it to do. My wife likes it. I really don't have anything bad to say about this car. I like the simplicity all around it. It has a good amount of storage. it's fun. Anyway, I'm going to wrap up because I think I'm rambling, but to all of you out there, if you haven't subscribed already, we are 40 subscribers short of 1,000, so go ahead, like the video so that YouTube shows it to more people, and subscribe so that I get a portion of the ad revenue and it doesn't cost you anything but pressing a button. Then love you all, hope you all have a great 2022. Take care, and we'll see you in the new year.